So today you guys are really in for a treat because if you want to not miss out on maybe hundreds or potentially thousands of dollars in missing royalties, this is a video you do not want to miss. Joining me today is Matt Cooling, and he's actually the CEO of Soundbox Plays. And Matt reached out to me because he is really specialized and getting himself involved with neighboring rights. Many of you have never even heard that phrase before this video. It's actually a phrase that I was only introduced to maybe less than a year ago. I had a buddy who owns a library, and he was kind of telling me a little bit about it. So it's kind of been making the rounds a little bit in our business, but it's a very mysterious, weird thing, and it's not very well known. And so Matt is hopefully going to help us uncover what they are and why many of us, I'm wondering for myself selfishly, am I missing out on maybe some royalties or some income from other territories around the world that I didn't even know I was entitled to? And that's really the big question mark that we're going to try to answer for you guys today. So Matt, thank you so much for being here, man. I really do appreciate your time. Why don't we start with what are neighboring rights and how come nobody really knows about them?
Good question. Yeah, it's a really interesting thing that's, I think, come to light in the last few, decade or so. Neighboring rights are actually only about 20 years old, which is kind of why not a lot of people know about them yet. Obviously, the structure around the music industry is you've got recordings and you've got publishing, and everything kind of channels through those two main income streams, right? And then whenever the whole industry changed about 20 years ago with digital music, and so the way that we started consuming music suddenly was shifted, and recording industries were like losing lots of money because obviously everything became digital and people weren't buying music in hard copy format anymore and all this sort of stuff. So there's a lot of questions about ways that the recording industry could be compensated for loss of income, et cetera, et cetera. And it goes all the way back to the 60s when there was something called the Rome Convention, which was basically a treaty that was signed by all these different countries around the world that agreed to award each other's territories with a remuneration for performance and broadcast of recordings. And so the whole legal structure is kind of based off the back of that. And then that's basically just allowed a sort of structure to be built that now means that, we can award royalties for broadcasting recordings within public spaces, on digital radio. That covers a massive spectrum of different avenues, from radio down to your local coffee shop, and how royalties are generated there. Now, typically, all of those royalties we normally just associate as publishing, right? So we only award these royalties to writers and creators, but actually, neighboring rights is the same royalty source point, but actually is awarded to performers. So you could be a guitarist, you haven't necessarily composed the part of the guitar. Someone else might have composed it, but you've actually performed it, but you are still entitled to a royalty off the back of that performance, if then that recording is duplicated and performed in a public space. And a lot of people aren't aware of this. And the reason why is because under recording contracts, record labels only take responsibility for their own share in this income stream. You see, so you might even sign a recording contract and think, oh yeah, my neighboring rights they're looked after because I remember it being in the contract. But the way that the contracts are structured, you're actually still responsible for to collect it on your own. They don't take that responsibility for you. And so what you have is then your recordings income and everything that's coming in there, whether that's sales and merchandise and tickets and all that stuff. And then you've got your publishing income if you're a writer and all that coming in. And then in the middle, you have an income stream that's from publishing, but awarded to performers, recorded performances. So that's why it's literally called neighboring rights, because it's like the neighbor to publishing, but has actually awarded to
Interesting. Okay, I always
Yeah.
thought it was neighboring rights because they were neighboring countries that were doing business, but that makes sense why they describe it that way. So one big point of confusion already, which for me is one of the reasons why probably people don't know about this. So essentially, if I understand you correctly, neighboring rights are essentially performance rights. So anybody performing music in a given territory where they've agreed to share revenue in that system based off of generated from the publishing system. If you've performed something in a medium that can earn that, you're awarded that. The complication or the confusion that I already have is, well, I'm signed to a company called BMI, which is a performing rights organization. But
Yeah.
do they collect my neighboring
No,
rights for me? They don't, right? So that's
no.
the confusion for me already.
So key here is the difference between performing rights and performance rights. That is the difference. So BMI is what's called a PRO. Okay, performing rights organization, and PROs are obviously every territory around the world has a PRO, and that is the agency that is dedicated to licensing businesses for the use of for performing music. So, radio stations, coffee shops, retail stores, all this, they will pay a license to be able to play music. And the license fees that are collected by BMI are obviously distributed to all the creatives, that are registered with them. And it's exactly the same principle, but in the US, you have an agency called Sound Exchange, and they do this as well. But the problem is with the US is actually slightly different to every other country in the world. And this is because the legislation is still fairly new, and we don't really have this sort of universal agreement across the globe about how this works. But the fundamental core of the whole thing is that it's based on reciprocity. So it's based on, in the international, it's why people think that it's based on international agreements, is because it's like, for example, the UK would say, we'll pay your nationals a royalty if their music is played in our country, if your country plays our nationals when it's played in your country. So it's built on reciprocity. That's the whole agreement is built on reciprocity. And that dates back to the 60s, you see, with the agreement from the Rome Convention. But the US didn't sign it. And so the US jumped on board much later, and as a result kind of built their own policies and laws around it and stuff. And so it's very different, but there are ways around it and such that people can actually be awarded correctly. But in the US currently, they only award neighboring rights for broadcast on digital radio platforms like Pandora, for example. But they don't award neighboring rights royalties for things like retail, and performances and things like coffee shops and stuff like that, because they don't have the administration set up to do that, whereas the rest of the world does.
Now,
so it's
two follow-up questions. One is on that point. What about TV performances, TV placements?
So TV and film, that sort of thing. Actually, there aren't neighboring rights associated with that, because that's typically covered under sync, as you'll know a lot about. So, if your music is attached to something visual and then that is used, that is often, that you get a sync license for that, and you get sort of a standout fee. The only time that it is actually awarded is if for things like music videos that are added to playlists. So I don't know, like a gym, for example. So a gym would have a visual playlist typically, of different music videos and stuff that might be playing. That would actually generate neighboring rights income.
And are you referring only to the US with that, or that's that kind of the sort of the universal?
That's a global thing. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Got it. So I would not be, because basically my entire career has been TV film placements. I've had some things on Pandora. I've had some little whatever, but probably not enough to make much of anything. So for me, with neighboring rights, because my primary bread and butter has been TV film placements, even I've had placements around the world in different markets. Does it apply to me in any way?
It can do, yeah, absolutely. It's obviously it's identifying where the source point is of the performance. You see, so the key term we need to identify is it a voluntary consumption or non-voluntary consumption? So when you listen to something on like Spotify, Apple Music, those sort of things, on other streaming platforms, that is a voluntary consumption. You've chosen to consume that piece of information, that audio, whatever. Radio is not voluntary, because you haven't chosen that specific piece of media to consume. It's sort of, you've just chosen the platform, and then the media is sent to you. So that is kind of the defining factor about whether there's a neighboring rights royalties associated with it. So if you can identify any of your recorded work that has been placed on any of these non-voluntary platforms, then you would be awarded neighboring rights income. You
mean if they were placed on voluntary platforms?
Non-voluntary. Right? Non-voluntary. Voluntary is there's no neighboring rights income associated with voluntary consumption.
Okay, I think I got those mixed up then. So
Yeah.
you're saying so for Spotify, if I'm going there and I'm choosing which song I want to, you're saying there is or is not neighboring rights with that?
There's no neighboring rights associated with streaming platforms.
So that's my question. So if I get a placement on a TV show, right? Somebody, are they selecting to watch that show, but are not selecting to listen to the music because the music's already placed in the background? So how does that work?
But they are selecting the show.
Okay.
So it would be wrapped up in the sync deal, you see, that's why you typically wouldn't get neighboring rights income for like a TV's placement or a film placement or anything like that. So that wouldn't be included, because typically you would be choosing to consume the show and everything inside that show.
Right. Okay.
That TV show.
Yeah, so in my situation, which a lot of my viewers are going to be, if they're not now, in the future, it's going to be a big tangled web, because I've been doing this for so long. I have so much stuff out there and all these sub-publishers and sub-libraries all over the world. So how do I even get started looking into this and deciding and finding out, like, am I eligible for this, and how much, like, where do you start to untangle that knot?
Well, that's it. So, I mean, you could start looking into it yourself. But like you said, the web is massive, and what's happening is these record companies are going to their sister companies in publishing and saying, could you go and get this for us, because you already have the infrastructure for royalty management. You got to remember, record labels don't collect royalties. So, so they've gone to their publishing partners and say, can you do this? And they've gone, yeah, sure, we'll do that. And then they've gone out there and realized that there is a whole different infrastructure out there across the globe that manages this income stream, and it's worth about $3 billion a year. So, and they've just realized they've got no infrastructure set up, nothing's in place, the whole thing's a mess, and it's just, the whole thing is a shambles. And the problem is, as well, with it is, publishing's universal in its format. You get 4 writers on a song, you agree to 25% a piece, and that's universal across the globe. Right? Every publisher will pay that 25%. Neighboring rights doesn't work like that. The value of your share is based on how the individual territory values your performance. So it's typically divided into 3 categories. You have what's called a contracted featured artist, the other featured artist, and a non-featured artist. The contracted featured artist is the main artist on the recording who is releasing and paying for the distribution of that recording. The other featured artist is any feature. So, if you had, I don't know, Justin Bieber featuring Chance the Rapper, Justin Bieber is the contracted featured artist, Chance the Rapper is the other featured artist. And how they are awarded a share of this royalty is based on that role. Anybody else on the recording is called a non-featured artist. Simply, you're on the recording, you're an artist, but you're not featured in the title, okay? Every territory around the world pays out the royalty based on what position you play in that, whether you're one of those 3 categories. And that percentage share varies in every territory. So in the UK, for example, we pay a 65% share across the first 2 categories at a 2-to-1 ratio. This is where it gets complicated, you see. And then the non-featured artists share a 35% share. In the US, they pay 90% to the featured artists and 10% to the non-featured. So do you see, that's quite a difference. And every country around the world also has their own way. So it's not as simple as, one play earns you X, or, you might have more plays in one country but earn less, and have, so it gets really, really difficult to actually navigate this and understand this and manage it. And so the best way to start is actually understanding and having a full catalogue of everything that you've ever done. And this is actually the biggest problem in royalty management, is creatives don't actually record their work or their credit properly. And I think, and I understand that, because I've come up in the creative sector. So I grew up, I came up as a writer and as a producer, and was largely in the studio engineering. And in studio sessions, people don't really want to talk about rights and splits and all this sort of stuff, because you just want to be creative, right? Yeah. You just want to be writing music, creating, and, being in the moment. And then what happens is the conversation comes along later. Oh, who did what? How did this happen? Well, actually, I did this, and well, I did that, and, and I should be awarded that. And suddenly it gets all complicated. And then oh, I didn't realize that was going to be such and such's next single. I should be paid more for that. You know, I didn't listen. And it all gets really messy. And this is why you get huge delays on releases and politics and people falling out and disputes and all of this. And it gets really messy. So what we're trying to do is provide a platform that allows all of that to be wrapped up really momentarily, so that you have a record of your credit right from the get-go, even before the stuff is released. And so you talk to any like creative and you say, oh, where's your list of credit? And they say, oh yeah, you can look at this, my Spotify or something. You go, great. What about the other 250 songs that you've worked on that are due to come out? Have you organized your credit for those? And they go, oh, well, don't know. So if I asked you, for example, and said, where do you keep a record of all of your credit?
Don't have one. Exactly. Good point.
And I promise you, in the last 18 months, I've asked that question and nobody has responded and gone, oh yeah, I have a full, no one, because they deal with it later. Do you see what I mean? So actually, there needs to be a record of this credit happening as it's happening. And that's the problem. So when stuff goes to market, there is a record of who's owed what and who played what on this recording, so that royalties can be allocated correctly. So this is what we're building right now. And this is what we have been building for 3 years now. We've been working on this piece of software that simplifies this entire process into an app that just allows artists to like organize their credit in real time. And that includes all the legal documentation, paperwork, everything. And it's all done at a simple, like one touch of a button type job. So, you can just simply add someone to a project. They can simply accept or decline the tag. And if they accept it, it's got all of the understanding about all the paperwork with clear understanding about what's happening in that moment. Because this is also where there has to be a conversation about ownership and what's happening when you're signing that agreement. When you sign a sync deal, you need to know what you're signing. What are you selling? What are the terms of that? And it's the same. And neighboring rights is interesting because there's no such thing as a buyout in neighboring rights. And this is, I think, another thing what musicians are going to find very, very interesting is that they'll go into a studio session and they will, I don't know, say, for example, a guitarist is paid $200. They come in and they go, right, $200, and you record this bit of guitar that we need done. They go in, they record the guitar, they sign the agreement, they walk away. And they think, that's it, I got my 200. But they don't realize is although they have sold the ownership of that recording to the label or whoever, they do not forfeit their neighboring rights income. And this is why neighboring rights are different to recordings and publishing. Because in publishing and recordings, you forfeit that. In neighboring rights, you don't. So what you have sold is ownership. So if I pay you $200, I now own that piece of guitar. I can do what I want with it. I can sell it to someone else for $10,000. I don't owe you a penny. I can put it on 40 different recordings as a sample. I can do what I want with it. I don't have to ask your permission to do that because I have an agreement that says that I own this piece of guitar. But every time that I do that, and that recording is then played in public or whatever, the royalty actually goes to you for the performance. You see, I get the owner's share of that recorded performance, but you get the performer's share. And that is why neighboring rights differs from everything else, you see. And that's what a lot of people don't really understand. A lot of people feel like or think they don't have royalties owed to them. It's like, oh, I signed that agreement, I took a buyout.
Well, yeah, because you're totally, blowing my mind because it's not even a right or a royalty that I even knew existed. So right. I can't tell you how many times I paid either a vocalist or a keyboardist or somebody to come and play on some of my sync tracks, and I give them the work for hire fee, and I'm like, well, I'm paying you just to do something that I've kind of already written for you, but I need somebody to perform it. Here's your fee. Thank you very much. But yeah, exactly like you said, I will be retaining all the ownership and the writer share and that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
And nobody is even thinking like, okay, well, let's make sure that we get the performer's credit sort of worked out here so that no matter what you do with this track, because you do have the right to do it, this performer will at least get some of the back end in terms of the performance, right? So I think the lack of education and even awareness of this is why nobody's keeping records and nobody's even asking for it because you don't even know that it exists. Yeah.
But the reality is there's no tools available to even allow you to do it. That's actually the problem. I think that, like, you know, and especially today, in today's industry, you know, there's a big conversation about ownership and, you know, and taking responsibility. People are being a lot more tuned in to actually what's going on with their rights, because, you know, a lot of artists are putting this in the spotlight, you know, about how they're being ripped off by labels and all this sort of stuff. And so there's just a bigger conversation now, and people want to be like more responsible and want to be a little bit more educated. But the truth is that there's nothing actually out there that allows people to do this, that, you know, and we're hearing all these conversations about, oh, you know, we're going to fix the royalty problem and we're going to do this. And you hear hundreds of millions of dollars in just black box royalties that are just being, you know, redistributed and disappearing. And you go, that's great. And they're all saying to artists and musicians and stuff and saying, it's really important that you're collecting your royalties. Great. How do you do that? You know, and it's like, why is no one actually giving these people the tools to do it? And you have to understand, like, for creatives, like, and I really sympathize with creators as you know, someone who grew up, like, this is not their job. Like, they, right. You know, they don't want to be spending all of their time and energy and trying to figure out what the legislation was that was agreed in 1960 that allows them to collect. You know, it's just not, they're just not interested. Like, they need something that works in the way that they work. And that's exactly what we're trying to do, is like, right, what they need is a tool that they can organize all of their performance credit in a few seconds, and all of the legal paperwork that goes ahead with that. So, you know, you can spend 20 minutes reading all of the necessary legal work and the paperwork before you actually sign up. And once that is done, everything is stored within your profile, electronic signatures, everything, that you can just sign agreements, you know. And then not only do you have all the agreements in place which acknowledge, one, ownership for the people paying for the sessions, but also proof of work for the people doing it.
Totally.
And that's just, since it actually supports both sides, and hopefully will eradicate, well, not eradicate, but, you know, minimize disputes and all this sort of stuff. And like you said, you know, you pay musicians, vocalists, whatever, to do something, fantastic. You own that, you can duplicate that. But what happens if that actual vocal loop ends up on a track that then went and sold, you know, 1 million records?
Yeah, and we would want that to happen because it doesn't cost us anymore, and it's basically an additional bonus for them to say, hey, if you work with me, we might go into these neighborhoods or these territories that'll actually earn you royalties and back-end money, which I don't know if you will call neighboring rights royalties, but whatever you want to call it, it's money, and it can definitely be owed to you just because you're performing on here. So it sweetens the deal for day job, you know, kind of day workers, like studio musicians, that kind of thing. I had one question about your app and your company. I definitely want you to maybe give a little bit more of a detailed pitch about how you know, my subscribers can take advantage of it or use it if they want to, or what's available to them as of this date. I know you're still working on it, but you were talking about, you know, asking me if I had made my or if I have a list of my credits. No, I haven't. But my question would be, with your app, let's say that you know, I do hire a musician, a guitarist, let's say, and we've decided we've used your app and we put in our credits or whatever. Is there anything that would allow that guitarist in 2 years to go into the app and go, you know what, I deserve more. I was actually the main feature here, right? Can things be changed after both people have signed off it and said this is what it is?
So this is what's so interesting about neighbouring rights, is that there is no negotiation on the split, because the split is determined by the territory. So like in publishing, for example, there's always dispute about, oh, well, I wrote a little bit more and my share should be higher because of this. And with neighbouring rights, you simply have to identify which one of the 3 categories you performed in. Are you
now
the main?
Can that be changed? That's what my question would be. Could a guitarist 2 years later go, you know, I'm the principal, I'm the main one?
The only thing that can be changed is the title. So when at the point of release, is the title, you know, Justin Bieber featuring this artist, and if it's not in the title, then that is how it's released. Which is why, actually, you know, producers, i.e., who don't necessarily perform on records, are releasing stuff as the main artist. So you can take like a DJ Khaled, for example. Like, he's not the main artist on anything that he does, but it's always him featuring. because then that entitles him to the biggest share of the royalty.
Got it. Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Totally.
So,
Okay.
like,
So yeah,
so
tell me
that's
about
why
your
it's so
company.
important, again.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's why it's so important to like the education and just understanding which one of those three categories do you fall into. Are you the main artist? Are you featured artist? Or are you a non-featured artist? Understand that before you do anything, and it will determine your royalty on that recording.
And if you're and like for me, most of my career, I've been the only creator of my music. I would basically be the main one. Yes. Okay. And there would be nobody following up. So 100% would go to me essentially. Okay.
Yeah. Sure.
Gotcha.
But then of course, if you've got a vocalist that's not named, they would be a non-feature.
Non-featured. Got it. Okay. Now, how can people work with you, or how can your company help people who are watching this? Like, where are you right now in this solution, like with your app and what people can do with it? And once they sign up with it, like what's step 2 in terms of going and getting those royalties and trying to collect on this stuff?
Yeah. So you can actually sign up. The website is live. We're basically running it in beta mode right now. So we're just testing it out. We're testing a bunch of features and trying to get that kind of feedback about what works with our clients and what doesn't work. So people are actually welcome to sign up. We're actually, we're allowing people just to go in and sign up and use it and give us the feedback actually, because it's really useful for us, because we want to know actually what people like and what they don't like. And
what's the URL for that, for them to get that?
So that it's soundboxplays.com.
Okay. And I'll have that down in the description box for everybody.
Perfect. So you can go to the website, you can sign up, create an account. If you actually want us to, you can start using the website as a cataloging service. So as in start logging your credit, organizing your catalog, all of that. So you can do all of that now, and it's totally free. The only thing is there is a small fee. It's £2, basically to verify your identity. But you only have to pay that fee if you want us to actually collect your royalties. So you don't have to pay that until you decide to actually sign up with us for collections. The reason why we do that is because we just want to make sure that we're paying the right people, because obviously anybody could turn up and say, oh yeah, I'm, this person, and we end up writing them a check for £1 million, and then you say, right, well, actually it's not the person. So we have to just obviously verify you are who you say you are at that point. But you can sign up for free. You can use it for free as a cataloging service, start tagging people, all of that stuff. That's totally fine. But the moment you actually want us to collect anything for you, you have to verify your identity. And then you just have to sign, obviously, an agreement with us to give us the permission to do it. Because obviously, legally, we can't touch anyone's money without their permission. So they have to just give us that permission to do so. And then obviously, we work currently with, almost 100 different countries around the world, collecting that money and just bringing it back in, and that generates reports and play data back to artists, which is also in its own right really valuable, because you don't know where your music's being played. As an artist, imagine if you get a report back and found out, oh, do you know what, we're getting 10,000 plays a month in Argentina, maybe we should go over there and do a show. It's valuable information. So so that's basically where we're at right now. So we're totally open to people signing up and creating accounts. And whilst we run it, our app, the actual mobile app, is coming in the summer.
Okay.
So we're almost completed with that. Again, though, with tech, it's just one of these things. You just got to take the time. And also, we just want to make sure that we're actually delivering, like a really good product, because we really believe in it, and we really believe in the need for it. And as you can imagine, the simpler it is for the user, the more complicated it is for us.
Right.
Because obviously our job is to make the whole process as simple as possible for people. So and like the app will be hopefully really informative. It's just like educating people on how this works, what it's about, why it's important. It's worth $3 billion a year at the moment.
Yeah. Now
it's the fastest growing aspect of the industry. So
yeah. No, absolutely. So, so the £2 to have you collect the royalties, I'm imagining there's like more fees. I mean, you guys are doing a lot of work to go get that money from us. Do you guys take a percentage of what you get, or is there an annual fee, or how does that work? Yeah,
so we take a commission on what we collect. Our goal is actually to be, we would love to get down to a zero commission service. That's our goal. The goal, the ethos of what we're trying to do is to support the artist. obviously we're a business, so we have costs, so we have to charge something somewhere, and the best way to do that is on a commission basis, because then the more money we're able to get you, the bigger our cut. So it's incentivizes us to actually get you more money.
Absolutely. I'm glad to hear you say that, because I was worried. It was like, if it's an annual fee, what's your incentive to really go collect? But yeah, and commission means that you don't get paid unless they get paid. So that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've discussed that. We've gone through every possible avenue of, like, do we charge a commission? Do we charge a subscription, or do we do this? We've looked at all the avenues, and we just thought, you know what, the goal here is to get the artist more money. So let's do that. So that's got to be the central focus. And as things grow, I would love to offer a 0% commission service. I'd love to do that, because, as things grow, there's other ways that you can make revenue, from a company that's got, a million users. So the goal here is to reduce that down to a 0% commission long term. Whether we'll achieve that, I don't know, but that's definitely our goal. Our focus is actually to put more money back in the pockets of the artists and the performers, because they're owed it. And the reality is a lot of people can make, sustainable income if they just understand how to do it. So we're trying to just make that possible for people. So yeah, so as it stands, there is a commission on what we collect. And that's just the standard, just a standard 10% commission on everything. But
wow,
like I said,
pretty low. And I definitely always believe in, like, empowering my partners to make money when I make money. So I love that BMI gets paid when I get paid. I love that my libraries get royalties when I get placement. So I really like that business model. And in my early years, I was much more stubborn about it, and, like, I'm not giving anybody anything. And it's like, you can hold on to 100% of your nothing that's not going to go out to anybody, and nobody's going to help you make money. It's like, you can have 100, you can have it all. You can be a king of nothing, And absolutely. At some point, you kind of mature past that, and you go, these are going to be my partners. These are going to be my advocates. These are going to be people that actually literally allow me to, make income. BMI and ASCAP are not perfect, but they allowed me to have a full-time income making music. So it's like, I appreciate them, and I appreciate people like you that are at least trying, putting their foot out there and seeing if you can do it. So it seems really fair, man. Seems really, really, ethical, and, just transparent in how you're doing stuff. So I really, really like that. I definitely encourage everybody to check out, soundboxplays.com if you guys would like to. I'll put the link, like I said, below. You guys can reach out. And Matt, I'm going to predict, even though we haven't released this yet, we're going to get a lot of questions. So are you open to maybe coming back if we get a lot are maybe on this video?
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. We can do that. Yeah, definitely. And this is, we totally expect that. I mean, even people that we are working with are still asking us a lot of questions, because they're sort of like, oh, well, what about this? And how does this bit work? And it's also trying to explain to them that the rules are slightly different in every single country across the globe, and we are, like, I mean, genuinely every day we are creating new relationships with new territories, and I guarantee you there are territories that we're working with that no one else is working with, it's like we're really proactive in this, and we're actually, I personally think we're quite ahead of the game in terms of a lot of other agencies and a lot of people that are trying to do something here, and I know that, and I can confidently say that because certain companies have tried to buy us as well. Names not mentioned, but we've had offers of buyouts and stuff from bigger entities and stuff that want, but what they want to do with it is not in line with what we're trying to do. We're trying to make this thing available to everybody to try and level the playing field and actually give the smaller guys an opportunity to actually organize and make reasonable income. And you're talking about some people, it might only be a few $1,000s a year, but for some people, that could change their situation. So why not make that available to them?
I don't care who you are. That makes a difference for anybody.
Right.
That's quite a few utility bills paid off right there, man. So
right. Do you know what I'm saying? That's someone's car insurance. That's someone's, that's someone's rent for a few months. That's whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? So it can change people's lives, and a lot of this money is just sat there. And we've got reports from certain countries that are like, here is a list of all of these artists that just haven't come and collect their royalties, and we're just looking at his list, and they're just like tens of thousands of names, and we're just like, no one's aware that there is this money sitting here owed to these people. But who's going to take the time that, for example, yourself, are you about to go and register 100 different accounts with 100 different
You're going to need
just a
some help.
mammoth
Yeah.
task.
Because like you said, artists don't want to be, they should be creating music. They shouldn't be doing metadata work, right?
Right, exactly. So this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to really simplify that for people and just allow them to focus on the thing that they want to be doing, and just knowing that they can get that thing coming in. And, we're aiming to do quarterly payouts, so you just get every 3 months, you just get balances dropped into your account, and you can just look at that money, decide what you want to do. It's like, it's your money. It should be yours. It should be in your hands. So, and it's just not. And we are genuinely talking about hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars a year that's just being left on the table because people are just not aware. They just don't know how it works.
Well, hopefully we're nibbling a little of that unawareness away with this video, and maybe we'll do another one. So guys, if you guys are watching this video, please, if something, and there's definitely probably hundreds of questions, hundreds of topics we didn't get into, if there's something that you guys are concerned about, confused about, unsure about, curious about, please do leave it as a comment below, and I'll try to do my best to get Matt back on here. Sounds like he's really willing to do that, so we can try to get a little bit more clarity around this, so we can get many of us some money in our pockets that we are owed. So that'd be really awesome. So Matt, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your time today. And
thank you for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, and for everybody that's interested, definitely go check out his links below. I'll put all of his relevant links in the description box here so you guys can learn more about him. And we'll see you guys very soon.